Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD tonight. This is a live webinar where we talk about Lyme disease. You create the webinar with your questions, and I try to answer those questions as best I can. And usually I can give you some answers. Sometimes I get stumped a little bit as well, too. And sometimes I learn new ideas from you. The way that you participate in the webinar is to write your questions. And the way that you can do that is right over there on the bottom of the right-hand side of the screen. There's a chat box where you can go ahead and write your question to me. I do ask one thing as you're writing that question, and that is you do not hit the enter key until your question is complete. Each time you hit the enter key, it actually sends a separate question to me, which really makes it complicated to follow things from my side of the webinar. I am recording the webinar tonight. And tomorrow morning is somewhere around 6 to 6:30 in the morning Seattle time, so that's Pacific Standard Time. I will send out an email letting everyone know when that recording is available. And you can find that recording a few places. One is you can find it on my Lyme disease supplement store called Marty Ross MD Supplements. On that homepage at the bottom, you can find that video. You can find it also on Treat Lyme, the website, my Lyme disease information site called Treat Lyme. And you can find it on the webinars page. That will be one place to find it. Another place you can find it is on Facebook. Facebook page is Facebook.com/Treat Lyme. And I post it there as well too. Let's see, where else is I posted? Yeah, there's one other place and I'm blanking, but look for it at my supplement store or on the Treat Lyme site or on the Facebook page. And those are the primary places to go ahead and find it, okay? So look for that email though coming out first thing in the morning. Also in that email will be a link to sign up for the next couple weeks of webinars. Tonight is the first in my May series, but I have one the next 2 weeks as well too, and I hope to see many of you there. So without any further ado, we'll get started. Oh, one more thing. As I do the webinars, I will post your questions on the screen. Now, I still read them, and the reason I read them is that sometimes in the recorded version, can't read these things, so I like to read them. Also, some people listen to me as they drive, believe it or not, and I want to make sure that they can hear this as well too. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. Hello, Jackie. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Marty. I have been missing your live webinars lately. All is the same with me except 2 new tick bites already this season. I hope that's not a forbearing of what's going to happen here coming up or an indicator of what's going to happen coming up. Let's see. I hope all is well with you and your Basenjis. Yes, they are. The Basenjis are here with me tonight. Those are my dogs, everyone. You may see them jump around in the background periodically. A family member had a 42 on her IgG a while back and will confirm with IGeneX 188 and 189 in co-infection testing as Medicaid Part B covers this. I feel she may have Babesia too. She was recently diagnosed with hiatal hernia, and she eats healthy and takes care of herself. I read many who have this also have Lyme. If she does have Lyme and is treated, will this get better, or would your patients deal with this as a separate issue? So I think what you're referring to is her hiatal hernia. If you treat Lyme, will the hiatal hernia get better? So everyone, hiatal hernia is an opening in the diaphragm. So in your so right here, about where your chest bone meets your soft part of your stomach, right there is a big muscle that goes deep inside of you that separates the lungs from the abdomen. Okay, that's called the diaphragm. The diaphragm moves up and down, and as it goes down, it allows oxygen to move into your lungs. And as it goes back up, it helps push some of that oxygen out of your lungs as well, too, or the gas that's in your lungs out. Now, it has some openings in it, and one of the openings is where your food pipe meets the stomach, okay? So it has to go through that. And that opening is only supposed to be as big as the food pipe. If it gets bigger than your food pipe, sometimes the stomach can start to go up through that opening, and that is called a hiatal hernia, okay? So those are separate conditions from Lyme, actually, Jackie, and should be dealt with as a separate issue. Now, sometimes the symptoms of the hiatal hernia, because sometimes you get heartburn and acid coming up into your food pipe, sometimes the medicines that we use to treat Lyme, especially some of those antibiotics like the tetracyclines, like doxycycline, minocycline, are extremely acidic, and that can sometimes make the heartburn symptoms of this worse. And so, yeah, as you get done treating Lyme, you get off your antibiotics, those symptoms may get better, but to actually fix the existing problem, that is a separate issue from Lyme altogether. Okay. All right. Thank you for that question, Jackie. And thank you for commenting about the Basenjis as well, too. And good luck to you. All right, let's see here. Let's see. Why do some Lyme doctors caution against eating fruit? I have Lyme, 125-pound female, and I'm treating it with Cowden herbs and Japanese knotweed. I was raised mostly a vegetarian, eating lots of organic fruits, vegetables, non-processed whole foods. Do I now have to give up mangoes, dates, and oranges? No, I disagree with that. So there's no reason in terms of treating the Lyme infection that you need to limit fruits. Now, sometimes because you're on antibiotics to treat Lyme, whether it's herbal or prescription antibiotics, Cowden protocol is they're antibiotics, they just happen to be herbal antibiotics. Those herbal antibiotics make it easier for yeast that live in your intestines to grow too much. And the way that herbal and prescription antibiotics work that can increase yeast in your intestines is that we all have yeast living in our intestines. And we also have bacteria that live there. And they both kind of keep each other under control. The yeast compete with bacteria, the bacteria compete with yeast for territory. Now, if you're on antibiotics, whether they're herbal or prescription, they can sometimes knock down, kill off those good bacteria, which allows yeast to grow too much, all right? Now, yeast also can thrive when they have a lot of sugar, all right? And so the simple sugars, especially things like cookie, candy, cake, ice cream, and the sugars that are found in beans, legumes, and whole grains. Those are the ones that give you your greatest chance. Now, some of your fruits also have sugar, but they're bound up enough in a way with the fiber that they have. I don't think there's much of a risk. So from a Lyme germ standpoint, sugar does not necessarily feed Lyme. I know some people write that they think it does, but there's no studies that show that sugar makes the Lyme infection worse. Sugar can make it easier to get yeast, but there's other ways to control that, which is I tell people to limit simple sugars, which would be cookie, candy, cake, ice cream. I have my patients take a lot of probiotics. My favorite probiotic product for us is something called Hmf Forte. If you do about 2 to 4 pills one time a day of that, that is a product that is shown to repopulate your intestines. It actually does a good job of taking back over that territory. And if you are on a antifungal agent at the same time, that could be herbal anti-yeast medicines, or it could be nystatin as a prescription, 2 pills twice a day on the nystatin, or herbal anti-yeast medications like a Capri Plus by Karuna or a Phytostan by Integrative Therapeutics. They have various herbs in them that can kill yeast. And if you do one of those 2 pills twice a day, that can limit yeast. So my yeast limiting program is probiotics, of which Hmf Forte is one of my favorites, 2 to 4 pills one time a day, and an anti-yeast medication or herb. The herbs would be things like Phytostan or Capri Plus or nystatin as a prescription. If you do those, that's often enough to prevent your yeast, and you don't need to get extreme in terms of limiting your fruit. So my advice to you is have your fruit, okay? All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Tom. Let's see. Good evening, Dr. Ross. I have a lot of intestinal pain and cramping, and I've been treating for possible intestinal yeast overgrowth with nystatin for almost 3 weeks without much improvement. Should I consider SIBO since it seems to be mostly small bowel, and when can I use antibiotics again? So, Tom, first of all, generally, when you have Lyme, if you've got a lot of gasiness and bloating, the odds are it's probably from too many yeast, okay? There's a greater chance of having too many yeast than there is of having small intestine bowel overgrowth, which is what SIBO stands for. So small intestine bowel overgrowth, everyone, means that bacteria that live in your large intestines migrate into your small intestines, and sometimes they give gasiness and bloating, all right? So first of all, Tom, I would relook at the idea, do you have yeast? And I would look and see at the symptoms. So symptoms that can suggest too many yeast are gassiness and bloating is one. Increased sugar cravings sometimes. Sometimes having rectal itching. Sometimes having a lot of feeling of things getting caught or stuck in your food pipe. Because if you get yeast up here, it'll give you those kind of symptoms, okay? Other things that make me think about too many yeast is if people start getting bad skin rashes or breakout in pimples or acne. That sometimes can suggest too many yeast. There's some theories as to why that can happen. One of those is that yeast release toxins in the intestines. They get absorbed in the bloodstream, and when those toxins interact with your skin, it can often give you things like rashes or even worsened pimples or even acne for the most part, okay? Something else that can indicate getting too many yeast is if you've been doing better with your Lyme treatment and then suddenly things get a lot worse. That sometimes can be due to too many yeast, and the reason is that when your immune system sees the yeast in the intestines, it overreacts sometimes and makes a group of inflammatory chemicals called cytokines, okay? And cytokines are inflammatory chemicals. They also are supposed to help turn your immune system on, but in Lyme disease, because you have Lyme in you, your immune system is already making too many cytokines. And when your immune system makes a lot of cytokines, excess cytokines give you the symptoms that we call Lyme disease. So your trouble sleeping, feeling fatigued, aching all over, your brain not working well, those are all excess cytokine symptoms. So now if you get too many yeast in your intestines and you start doing worse, that's because they're also triggering too many cytokines, okay? So first of all, make sure you got too many yeast. The best way to do this is look and see if you have symptoms and you have enough of those symptoms, okay? Second thing is, if you've decided you actually have too many yeast, even if it's just based on gassiness and bloating, nystatin generally is just not going to be enough to get rid of it. Not when you have Lyme disease. So I usually like to take nystatin and couple it with a stronger antifungal, even anti-yeast, antifungal medicine, even than nystatin. And one of my favorite combinations is to use diflucan as a 200 milligram pill, one pill one time a day, coupled with nystatin, 500,000 international units as 2 pills twice a day, and do that treatment for at least a month. Okay, you got to do it for at least a month. And often it's going to take about 2 to 3 weeks into it before you start seeing improvement. So one of the reasons you may not be seeing any improvements yet is just too weak of a treatment. Now, make sure you're also throwing your probiotics in that I just talked about in the previous questions as well, too. Okay. And again, my favorite would be the Hmf Forte product. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Thanks for the question, Tom. Hello, Tom. Let's see. My son has Lyme with Bart and Ehrlichia. Recently told he may have problems with oxalates and that many Lyme people also have this. It can lead to fibrotype pain. Can you discuss this? Thank you for all you do. No, I can't, actually. I'm starting to notice that is a new theory that's starting to be out, and I just don't have enough information to be able to discuss it. I'll have to try to get some more information with you about that. But one thing we find in Lyme is that there's these new ideas all the time. People are trying to find the answer, and there's new ideas that come up, and then everyone starts trying to figure out if that thing is the thing that works. The majority of them don't make much of a difference, and they've just started seeing questions here in the last 1 or 2 webinars about oxalates, which means that suddenly somebody has taken that as an idea that can make a big difference. So I'll have to look into it a little bit more. I'm just not familiar enough with the idea. Okay. All right. Remember I said I get stumped every now and then. Sometimes you guys give me new things to look into. This one I'll have to look into. All right. Thanks, Tom. Hello, Jennifer. Let's see. Thank you for all you have taught me. You're welcome. Can you explain the pathomechanism by which hormones become out of balance as a result of having Lyme and co-infections? My estrogen has shot up to 800 at times. My testosterone is undetectable. My progesterone is low, and let's see, sex hormone binding globulin is over 200. Now, I'm also hypothyroid. I'm taking a bunch of hormone replacement therapy, but would really like to know what is going on and if this will normalize with continued treatment. Also, are there things I can do to help with this process? I'm especially interested in ways to something the sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG, since that is what one lab that just won't budge. I also take DIM and calcium diglucinate. Thank you. All right. So, Jennifer, I don't have a simple solution for you. I do have an answer for why things get messed up, but I don't have a simple solution for you. And I also, to give you a more accurate input, I probably even need to see your actual hormone levels too. But I'll be able to answer the first part of your question. So there's an area of the brain called the hypothalamus and pituitary that actually directs your various hormonal systems to make what they're supposed to make. Okay, so the hypothalamus detects blood levels of your various hormones like estrogen and progesterone, and your cortisol, like in your adrenal glands, and your thyroid, like for your thyroid hormones. Okay, and then it decides based on its interpretation if there's adequate levels, and if not, it communicates with the other part that it's attached to called the pituitary. And the pituitary then will release chemicals that wind up telling the thyroid to make its stuff, or the adrenals to make its stuff, or your ovaries to make its stuff, basically. Okay. So for instance, the pituitary will release something called thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH. I think many of you may have heard of that. And the TSH tells the thyroid gland to make both a T4 thyroid and T3 thyroid. Those are the two kinds of thyroid made by the thyroid gland. All right. Your pituitary also, as it's being directed by the hypothalamus, makes something called follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, which are involved in ordering the ovaries to make testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. Yes, I said testosterone. The ovaries make just a little bit of testosterone too. And in males, the FSH and LH are responsible for helping determine the production of testosterone in the testicles, for instance. Okay. Now, that area of the brain, the hypothalamus and pituitary, is influenced by cytokines. All right. And remember, I said that in Lyme disease, I mentioned earlier tonight that there is an overproduction of cytokines. So let me step back here for a minute. So cytokines are chemicals that are made by white blood cells when they see an infection. And when white blood cells see an infection, they'll make more cytokines. And what cytokines are supposed to do on the good side, they cause more white blood cells to be made. They help draw those white blood cells to where the infection is, and they help them work better. All right. Those are all good things that cytokines are supposed to do. However, in Lyme disease, they're made in excess because the immune system often doesn't do a good job, but it keeps trying harder and harder. And eventually it can make too many cytokines. And too many cytokines can disturb your sleep centers in your brain. They give you pain. They can cause immune suppression, which is one reason you want to lower them, because they can actually suppress the immune system. And those too many cytokines give you confusion. They give you fatigue. But the main thing, that one of the big things they do is they interfere with the correct functioning of the hypothalamus pituitary. They disrupt the ability for the hypothalamus pituitary to correctly interpret what is going on, and therefore there is an incorrect releasing of the various directing chemicals like thyroid stimulating hormone and follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone that area of the brain is supposed to release. Okay, so that's the mechanism by which it happens. And I can't answer the rest of your questions. I would need to know actually more about your actual hormone levels. What I will tell you, one thing you can do to help correct this is make sure you're doing good things to lower your cytokines. All right. And many of you know that the main thing I like to use to lower cytokines is curcumin. And I like using a liposomal variety of curcumin, which means it's microscopically wrapped in fat, because that wrapping it in fat increases the absorption into the brain, which in your case is where you definitely want to get it, okay? And so the product I like using for liposomal curcumin is a product made by Thorne called Mariva 500. I just find clinically that it's very active, and so that's what I would suggest you do. And you can take anywhere from 500 milligrams 3 times a day up to 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day. The other thing you might want to do to help lower those cytokines is be on a very good antioxidant. The reason you want to be on a good antioxidant is oxidizing agents trigger white blood cells to make cytokines. And so if you can lower those oxidizing agents, it'll make it so there's less directions going to the white blood cells telling them to make cytokines, okay? Also, glutathione, which is a very powerful antioxidant that I would suggest you use, can lower toxic chemicals. It helps with detox in the liver, and it can lower toxins that also trigger those cytokines to be made by white blood cells, all right? So I would add glutathione, liposomal glutathione. Again, you want it to be microscopically wrapped in fat to increase absorption to make sure it gets to the brain, all right? And so the product I like using for that is something called Trifortify by a company called Research Nutritionals. And I would do 5 milliliters once or twice a day, all right? So there are some things you can take without me actually knowing your precise numbers, and these are directed at lowering the cytokines down. And that would be liposomal curcumin up to 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day, and liposomal glutathione 5 milliliters twice a day, which is around 450 milligrams twice a day on that product, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Jennifer. Thank you for that question. Bear with me, everyone. I'm just trying to clear that question out. Hello, Val. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Could you explain what abnormalities on a CBC blood test might occur with Babesia, Ehrlichia, and anaplasmosis? Would there be any obvious indications of CBC of Lyme or co-infections? Thanks for your insights. You know, there really are not specific findings you're going to see on a CBC, okay? They're not that way of looking at your blood. There just really isn't. I mean, sometimes Lyme and the co-infections lead to immune suppression, which can decrease your white blood cell count. But that finding of a low white blood cell count does not necessarily mean that you have that it does not indicate which of these infections it is, okay? So on a CBC, unfortunately, there really isn't any directions that I'm able to find by looking at a CBC, no matter in terms of how it looks, how the indicators look, levels of different kinds of white blood cells, levels of hemoglobin or red blood cells. There is nothing on that would indicate Lyme in terms of how that pattern might look, all right? Those are my comments on that. Good luck to you, Val. Thank you for that question. Hello, Heidi. Let's see. Hi, doctor. How effective are these antibiotics? I hear they lower the immune system and hard to combat this Lyme. Thanks. So, Heidi, so treating Lyme in general, the infection Lyme in general, whether you're using prescription or herbal antibiotics, can be difficult, all right? If we look at the ability for somebody to recover from chronic Lyme, my experience and those of many of my colleagues suggest that when somebody has chronic Lyme, that means Lyme of a year duration or more, that often it can take about 2 years on average to recover, okay? So it takes a long time, all right? Secondly, even with treatment, about 10% of people don't get any benefit. It doesn't matter whether we're using herbal or prescription antibiotics, they just don't get benefit, all right? Of the 90% that get benefit, those improvements can range up to 100%. That means some people get 50% better, some people get 100% better, for instance, okay? So it can be a complicated infection to treat. When we make a decision to use antibiotics, we're actually considering risk and benefits, okay? So the benefit is that by knocking the Lyme germ load down, you may have improved health. That's the benefit, all right? But there are risks involved. And one of those risks is that we can disrupt the good bacteria that line the intestines. And that's even if we use a lot of probiotics. And there's a growing body of science that says that those good functioning bacteria in your gut are responsible for helping the immune system to work well better over time. They regulate detox mechanisms. They help with just a lot of functions, okay? So it is possible that by using antibiotics, herbal or prescription over time, that we knock down the good bacteria in the gut, and that could lead to some immune system problems down the road. However, when it comes to getting rid of Lyme, sometimes you don't have a choice. You got to knock the germ load down, even at risk of doing some immune dysfunction with the bacteria through changes in the bacteria in your gut. It's a risk-benefit ratio. I wish there was another way to knock down the Lyme germ to get a person healthy. I know a number of my colleagues, or especially those in the naturopathic community, and many people do not want to use antibiotics. So they will try to do detoxing. They'll try to do things to boost the immune system. They'll do everything but give the antibiotics. But when somebody's got chronic Lyme and they're sick, you're often going to have to resort to the antibiotics. There's just no way around it. And again, that's whether it is prescription or herbal antibiotics, okay? So it's a risk-benefit ratio. All right. Good luck to you, Heidi. Hello, Randy. Let's see. I found out I have 3 viruses. Oops, excuse me here, everyone. I just got a text that I got to take a look at here. All right, let's see. I found out I have 3 viruses: herpes 6, cytomegalovirus, and Epstein-Barr. What do you recommend taking for viruses? I have 77% heavy metal intoxication. Doctor recommends chelation for lead and aluminum and DMPS IV for mercury. What do you think about these IVs? Dangerous? All right. So let's break this question into parts here. All right, so the viruses that you have, the herpes 6 cytomegalovirus and the Epstein-Barr virus, are viruses that we even find in healthy people. All right, so just finding those viruses in you does not mean you necessarily need to treat them. All right. So often when doctors are looking for viruses, what they're going to wind up doing is they're going to do testing to see if your immune system is making antibodies against those viruses. So antibodies are proteins made by white blood cells when they see an infection. What they do is they attach to the infection. And once they're attached to that infection, they act as a big signaling device or radio tower that says to the other parts of the immune system, come in and get this germ. And they serve as a flag to tell the white blood cells to come get that germ, okay? So that's what antibodies are. Now, we make antibodies even if the immune system has controlled the infection. You're still going to make antibodies to help keep that infection under control. If we look at statistics and we look at studies, if we were to take 100 healthy people and pull them off the street, science tells us that if we did antibody testing, we would find elevated antibodies against cytomegalovirus, Epstein-Barr virus, or herpes type 6 virus somewhere around 10 to 20% of the time in healthy people. Okay, so the issue is just having antibodies does not mean that those germs are growing out of control and causing a problem. In fact, finding antibodies may be a good sign. It means your immune system is working well, keeping those infections under control. And because they're chronic infections, we cohabitate with them. All right, we live with these things, just like we live with bacteria in our skin. We can live with these kind of infections. So I tend not to treat based upon elevated antibodies. What I tend to do is I'll think about going after chronic virus infections. If I'm about 6 to 9 months into a Lyme disease treatment and somebody is not getting better, I'm going to start wondering, maybe those viruses are more active than I want them to be. But the way I'm going to go looking to see if they're active is I'm going to measure a blood test called a nagalase. Nagalase is an enzyme that is made in the covering of viruses. It also is made in cancer cells too. And what this purpose is it helps, it makes it so that a chemical that is supposed to activate a type of white blood cell called a macrophage, it makes it so that that chemical does not work correctly. So macrophages are types of white blood cells that fight viruses and they eat up cancer cells too. Okay, that's what the relationship is. And this chemical called GCMAF, macrophage activating factor, MAF, GCMAF has 3 sugar groups on it, and nagalase eats a sugar group off of one of those sugar groups off of the GCMAF, rendering it unable to activate macrophages. Therefore, you're going to tend to have a hard time getting rid of those viruses, okay? So you can measure nagalase levels because they're made by viruses. And if you have elevated nagalase, that says you've got active virus infections. Now, it doesn't tell us which active virus infection. It just says you got active virus infections. And that's okay because it may even be identifying viruses that we don't even have the ability to measure antibodies against, all right? So it gives you a good indication if your immune system is just having a hard time keeping viruses under control. So I often will treat if there's an elevated nagalase above about 1.2 or higher. I have written a 1.8, but experience says anywhere from 1.2 to 1.8 or higher, I'm going to want to treat. And what I like doing is I like using things that are universal antivirals. And one thing I like using is olive leaf extract. And I try to work a person up to 1,500 milligrams 3 times a day on that. I also like to do things to stimulate the immune system to help. And that can be used to use something called reishi mushrooms. Reishi mushrooms do a good job of turning on cells that fight virus infections. And I would do a 400 milligram pill 3 times a day on that. Or I might use something called transfer factors. Transfer factors are proteins made by white blood cells that target other white blood cells to fight the right infection. And there's a transfer factor mix that has transfer factors in it that target virus infections and a variety of virus infections. And that product is called transfer factor plasmic. And you would do 1 pill twice a day on that, okay? So that's kind of how I approach the viruses. So again, just testing antibodies positive for viruses doesn't mean they're a problem. You got to go look at it to see, are they active? And a sign that they can be active is if there's high levels of a nagalase. Nagalase is a test that is considered to be more of an experimental test. The lab that does that is a lab out of New Jersey. You could order up a test kit from them. The lab system is called Health Diagnostics in New Jersey, and they are the one that do the nagalase blood test, okay? All right, then, regarding chelation for lead, aluminum, I would need to tell you what's the best way to go about this, I would need to see your actual numbers. So if your doctor has used a lab to look for the heavy metal toxicity, probably has used, he or she has probably used a lab called Doctor's Data. And Doctor's Data does a kind of a misleading reporting of their heavy metals. And so what they do is they have a chart on the front that has a table on the front that lists out each of your heavy metals and then tells you what the level is in a number, a numeric number, but then also charts it using and tries to tell you whether it's normal, high normal, or extremely normal, basic, or above normal. Okay, so it uses a zone system of green, yellow, and red. And it kind of leads you to think, oh my God, it's in the red level, I got to treat, okay? The problem is that those levels are not, the color coding system is a bit misleading. You actually have to look at the true number to see, is it extremely elevated? And I usually don't find much benefit in treating for heavy metal toxicity unless those heavy metals are about 3 to 4 times the upper end of normal in terms of how those labs are reported, okay? And it's just, I don't find much benefit in treating Lyme unless they get into that range. And so that would be my suggestion for you, okay? And now with lead and aluminum and mercury, I think actually, I mean, yeah, you could do this with oral chelation and TMPS. I don't think it's any harmful or more extreme than doing it orally. I think any way of getting those out would be fine, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Randy. Hello, Michelle. Hi, I'm learning so much from these webinars. Great. I'm glad you are. That's why I do them. Thank you. You're welcome. Let's see. I had an itchy Lyme infected ear for a couple of years, and it drives me crazy. Keeps me up at night, etc. The oral antibiotics just aren't getting it. Is there any topical formula, either pharmaceutical or herbal, to help with this? Okay, so itchy ears can mean a number of things, okay? So if the itching is on the inside, I would have your doctor look in there, and they probably have, but they should be able to tell you whether you've got an infection of the internal canal. That's called Otitis Externa. And that can be caused by either bacteria or by yeast, okay? Now, there's a natural treatment you can do for that, which is to get a type of eardrop that is called garlic mullein. Mullein's an oil, and the garlic is immersed in that or extracted into it, okay? Garlic mullein, and that's Mullien or EIN, one of those ways. But Herb Farm, for instance, the company Herb Farm, I believe, makes a garlic mullein drop, and that's HERB and then PHARM. And you'd want to put a few of those drops in your ear, hold your head sideways, probably hold it for about 3 or 4 minutes, about 3 or 4 times a day. Do that for a week or two, and often that's going to take care of your bacterial or yeast ear infection. Yeast ear infections give you itching on the inside, okay? Now, if your itching is outside, let's say like in this part of the ear, and if you, or even in this part of the ear, and you look in there, you don't see any kind of a rash, then that kind of itching sometimes can be what we call neurodermatitis, which is nerves that get inflamed from Lyme or other infections can release chemicals that give you an itching sensation, okay? In that case, you got to treat your infections. I'm just trying to think of what you could do topically with that. I don't have a good idea for you on that one. If it is out here, you might even try a steroid cream, although I would try to use that cautiously. Boy, I'm not coming up with a good solution for you on that one. All right. Good luck to you, Michelle. Hello, Naomi. Hold on here just a minute, please. Hello, Naomi. Let's see. Our son's recent test results show a past Bartonella infection. Also has very high IgG antibodies to Epstein-Barr virus and Mycoplasma pneumoniae. A doctor thinks the Bartonella may be a causal factor in our son's long history of OCD flares. Is OCD something you see with Bartonella? The answer is yeah. So Bartonella is known to give you a lot of psychiatric issues. And those can be things like anxiety, depression. And some people, they can be hallucinations, and some people it can be OCD. Okay, it's that's one of the things we happen to see with Bartonella is more extreme or difficult psychiatric issues can have Bartonella as a cause. Yeah. And so that's just not my opinion. For instance, I was recently reading Buhner, as in Buhner Herbs has a book out about Bartonella. He writes extensively about that. And also Columbia, the doctors at the Lyme Research Center at Columbia University have recently written a book about that too. I'm just blanking on his name. But there's a book about Lyme disease that was recently published that in there, Brian Fallon, Fallon, MD, who runs the Lyme Disease Center at Columbia University, has written a recent book that came out, I think, in December, January of this year about Lyme disease. And in there, he's got a section on Bartonella, and he also talks about Bartonella giving a lot of psychiatric symptoms. So the answer is yes, it can. And that'd be something to think about treating. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Naomi. Good luck to your son. Hello, B. Let's see. I saw a recent in vitro study that used bee venom, which killed all Lyme forms, including biofilms. Seems since it's a protein, it would need to be administered in mucous membranes topically or IM. What do you think? You know, there's people, some people can get benefit from bee venom, and probably the strongest way to do, some people actually do bee stings. They actually get themselves stung by bees, okay? I don't know that I recommend that necessarily, but I know that people can get benefit that way. There are some people that grow their own beehives to do that, for instance. Topical bee venom, sometimes if you put it, rub it in, or if you do it through the mucosa, it might give benefit too. But probably your strongest way to get benefit from bee venom therapy would be to actually get bee stings. It's called apotherapy. And there's some people that do get benefit from that. All right. Good luck to you, B. Hello, Barbara. Let's see. I have a reaction when I get run down that consistent of an instant flu-like onset. I'll sneeze rapid fire 10 plus times, and my sinuses drain nonstop. This will last for hours, sometimes more than a day. My Lyme literate medical doctor thought it might be a mast cell activation, but my allergist disagrees. Any thoughts? So first of all, I haven't seen something like that occur in any of my patients, but there's a lot of things that happen in Lyme disease to people. So mast cells are a type of cell that historically we thought were involved mostly in allergies. So mast cells are where things that we're allergic to land on them, and they release histamines, basically. So, we use antihistamines for allergies. So histamines, when they get released by these mast cells, will interact with your blood vessels, causing them to leak clear liquid, and you get stuffy nose, for instance, okay? And also they release chemicals that lead to inflammation and swelling in the sinus passages, for instance, too, all right? Now, there's more recent studies that are starting to show that not only are those mast cells turned on by things we're allergic to, but that infections can cause them to get turned on. So things like parasites, Lyme infection, Lyme and the co-infections, okay, can also turn on these mast cells to make cytokines, but also to more easily release their histamines too, okay? So what I will tell you, there's not a lot of research about Lyme disease and mast cell activation syndrome. Is it possible that what your doctor is thinking is correct? Yeah. Maybe it is that you suddenly have more of a Lyme load and those mast cells are getting more turned on, and that's leading to this problem. Will your allergist be aware of this? Probably not. That whole science that's being looked at about infections causing this is still not considered to be mainstream science, although there are people writing about it. So your allergist may not be aware of it, all right? I do have a whole article at Treat Lyme, my Lyme disease information site, about various things you can do to regulate your mast cells and mast cell activation. The two main herbs I like using for that, and there's other things you can do too, are quercetin, which is a mast cell stabilizer, and luteolin. And those are two herbs that can do a nice job. The quercetin is a 250 milligram pill, and you would do 2 pills 3 times a day. You need to take it all the time, not just when things activate, because it's regulating the mast cells to kind of turn them down and stabilize them, okay? Luteolin I like using as a product called Neuro Protect. It's NeuroProtek. And that there's 100 milligrams of luteolin in that. There's a little bit of quercetin and rutin in it too, but the main product is luteolin. And that I would do as 1 pill 2 or 3 times a day, all right? So I'm going to do a quick screen share here. I want to just show you a couple things here. Well, All right, so I'm back again. So again, anyone can buy it, and I appreciate your business if you buy there. It helps to support these webinars as well too. All right, let me go back here. Good luck. Good luck with that too. Hello, Naomi. Let's see. Doctor is using Brian White. I think you mean Byron White, not Bar. I'm even saying it wrong. It's Byron, Byron, Byron White formulas. Byron White formulas and heavy metal detox to treat. Do you have an opinion on the efficacy of Byron White formula? Should we also be treating mycoplasma? Thank you. So, boy, I don't care for Byron White formulas. I just don't find them to be that effective, Naomi. So Byron White is an herbalist that has developed these formulas. He also believes that there is an energetic component to how they work, and even has gone so far as to energetically infuse them with energy through shining a bunch of different lights and energetic sources on the herbs, okay? When it comes to whether they work, I tend to just shy away from them. I haven't been that impressed with them. In terms of treating Bartonella, there are better herbs you could use. Herbs for Bartonella, for instance, are Hutania and Sitta acuta are two herbs that I use. I got the idea to use those from Buhner Herbs. They work about 75% of the time. Prescription Bartonella, for instance, work better. But if you're looking, I'm not sure, I can't remember whether you just wrote me a question here or not, but in terms of herbs that I recommend to treat various infections, there's two ways to look for those, all right? So let me go ahead and do a quick screen share here again. Of options to consider for herbs. If you're looking for just basic herbal approaches that I would recommend, take a look at my treatment protocol page for the Ross Lyme support protocol. I rewrote this recently, so you see this is the most up-to-date version of it. And if you scroll all the way down here, I eventually get into what do you do to treat the infections, okay? So I have a section on Lyme infection, and my two favorite herbs for the Lyme infection would be Otoba bark and cat's claw, okay? In terms of co-infections, Bartonella, my two favorite herbs are the Hutania and Sitta acuta I was just telling you about. And for Babesia, you can look at using Cryptolepis or Artemisinin, okay? So you can find that information here in my treatment protocol. The other thing you can do if you're trying to figure out how do I treat various infections, either herbally or with prescriptions, is take a look at the chapter called Infection Treatment Plans. And then you want to take a look at if you want to know how to treat viruses, take a look at the article I've written on viruses. If you want to know what to do for treating Babesia, either prescription or herbal, look at my Kills Babesia article. Or if you want to look at what to do for Bartonella, look at my Kills Bartonella article, okay? Look at either. I list a variety of prescription as well as herbal options, and I even explain the odds that those are going to work for you as well too, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Naomi. Thank you for that question. Hello, Michelle. Let's see. I'm learning so much from these. Oh, you already answered. I already answered that. Let me get rid of that. Hello, Faye. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thanks for everything. You're welcome. My daughter, Deborah, is to take nitazoxanide and terbinafine. She cannot swallow pills. She was told to take the liposomal curcumin. We're having a problem finding a liquid one here in Vancouver. Is there something else she could take instead that is a liquid or a pill? So, Faye, I think for any of these, ultimately, even the nitazoxanide and the terbinafine, it may be if your daughter is having a hard time taking the pill forms that your physician will have to go ahead and have those compounded into liquid versions. I don't have any other ideas. Sometimes you just got to have a pharmacy make things into liquid varieties if they don't naturally come in a liquid variety. And I'm afraid for both of those, that's what you're probably going to need to do. All right. Good luck. Hello, Eric. Hi, Dr. Ross. I did Candida, IgG, IgM, IgA, and they all came back elevated. Any recommendations? I take 150 billion probiotics daily. So, Eric, I don't rely. So, the issue with Candida isn't whether you have had it before. The issue is whether it's active and overgrowing in you now. Okay. So, all of us have some yeast that live in us. They just naturally populate the intestines. And because of that, we make antibodies against them. All right. So your doctors have measured antibodies. They've measured IgG antibodies, IgM antibodies, and IgA antibodies. And the best I can say is because that says, did your immune system react against these things that naturally live in your intestines? The odds are they would, because they live there and the immune system likes to make antibodies against them. That doesn't tell me, though, whether you got too many. And the only way to really know if you have too many is to actually look at what your symptoms are. So do you have a lot of gassiness and bloating? Do you have a lot of sugar cravings? Do you get worse after you have sugar? Do you have pimples or acne? I covered a number of these symptoms earlier. So what I'm going to do, rather than taking time to go through this right now, what I would do is try to figure out first, do you have too many yeast? And I'm going to direct you to an article that I've written about that you can look at later, okay? So I'm going to go do a quick screen share here again. Take a look at the chapter on yeast. Okay, and this is my yeast chapter. There's an article here in the yeast chapter called A Silent Problem, Do You Have Yeast? Click on that and read it. And I give you a number of tools, even a tool you can use based on your symptoms to figure out, do you have too many yeast, okay? So I take a look at that article, all right? Hello, Lisa. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. What are your thoughts about Byron white products? As I mentioned earlier, I don't find them to be that effective. I find them to help in general for any of the conditions, maybe about 30 or 40% of the time. I think there are much better options that you have. I'd take a look at the various treatment plan articles that I have written for the various infections, okay? Also, it's a good idea to take a low-dose beta blocker for mild dysautonomia. How do I take artemisinin and SOD correctly? Thank you. All right. So dysautonomia, everyone means there's a part of our nervous system called the autonomic nervous system. Dysautonomia means it's not working correctly, okay? And the autonomic nervous system is made up of adrenaline and anti-adrenaline. And the major nerve that governs the release of those chemicals is something called the vagal nerve. It's one of the cranial nerves. It comes off here in the back of the brain. So beta blockers help block the adrenaline surges that you get as part of that, okay? And so they can help limit some of the sweating that sometimes people get, and sometimes the racing and the pounding of the heart that some people get. So if you're having significant symptoms of those, you might do the beta blocker. If you're not having significant symptoms of those, I don't think you necessarily need to do it. It's not going to necessarily help you get better any quicker or not quicker from being by using those as part of your Lyme treatment. We usually use them just for the management of the symptoms, okay? All right. So the artemisinin SOD, everyone, is a product made by Research Nutritionals. Artemisinin is used by a number of my colleagues for a variety of reasons. One is it may stimulate the immune system. Second thing is it can treat babesia. It actually is an agent that can treat babesia as well too. And actually, I don't routinely use it. I use an artemisinin product actually made by a company called Allergy Research. I do carry this product, but I don't use it. So I like using. So let me look something up. We're gonna do a screen share and look this one up together. So hold on here a minute. Oops, I was gonna do a screen share. Hold on. Okay, so it's got, so it has artemisinin in it. It also has curcumin and quercetin. All right, so it's the curcumin is, and the quercetin that are in there are being used to block cytokine production, okay? All right, so the way I would use this, so 2 pills of this has 250 milligrams of artemisinin. If you're using this to treat babesia, which is what it can be used for, the way that I would do this is I would start at 2 pills 3 times a day for 3 days on, then take 11 days off. If you tolerate that and that doesn't flare up your babesia symptoms too much, the next time you take it, I would go up to 3 pills 3 times a day for 3 days on, 11 days off. And if you tolerate that, then I would go up to 4 pills 3 times a day for 3 days on and then 11 days off. Okay. Now the reason the reason that you actually take time off the artemisinin is there's an enzyme that the intestines develop that can actually deactivate it after you've been on it for a few days. Now, I know that some of my colleagues will tend to use that artemisinin SOD also to stimulate the immune system, and they'll use it continuously. I just think that the research says that's not a good idea. So the only situation and the reason is because it gets deactivated, okay? So the only reason I use artemisinin in any way is actually to treat babesia, but I wind up doing it as a 3-day on, 11-day off regimen, as I was telling you, and you gradually build up as you take it, okay? All right, good luck to you, Lisa. Hello, Tom. Let's see, Dr. Ross, when would you consider adding transfer factors into a Lyme treatment protocol? Thanks. That's a good question. So I think you may be familiar again with my treatment protocol, which I showed you all earlier tonight, is actually designed in a lot of ways to boost the immune system. Okay, so the key steps in there, like getting sleep, that boosts your immune system. Lowering cytokines boost the immune system because cytokines actually suppress the immune system. Supporting the adrenals and thyroid boosts the immune system. Ashwagandha boosts the immune system. Getting your infections out boosts the immune system. All right. Detoxing boosts the immune system. So, et cetera. All those things are built in. So generally, because of all those components of my treatment protocol, I'm not going to do anything specific as an immune booster until maybe I'm about 6 to 9 months in. In other words, additional steps. All right. So at about 6 to 9 months in, if somebody's having a hard time getting better, I may think about adding things to boost the immune system, like the transfer factors. Okay. Now that's one situation I'll do it. The other time I'll do it is if I'm done treating somebody and I want to help keep them in remission. So as part of my remission protocol, I will use a transfer factor L+, which has the transfer factors in it against Lyme and the co-infections. And in that situation, I'll do it as 1 pill 2 times a day. Okay. So for more information about how I use what I do when somebody's done with treatment, let me just show you a quick article here. There's a chapter on, I believe I've got one on remission test. Where is it? Oh, here it is. End of treatment. Okay. So take a look. There's an article that I have about what to do at the end of treatment. It's called Finished and How to Prevent Relapse. All right. And so in here, I talk about the steps you would take, including steps to boost the immune system at the end of treatment to prevent a relapse from happening. Another time I'll think about using transfer factors. I like using transfer factor plasmic if I'm going to wind up treating somebody for chronic virus infections. I'm going to sometimes use transfer factor Enviro, and I'll use that if I've got somebody with a lot of mold toxin problems sometimes too. Those are situations I'll use that. In my article on transfer factors, which you'll find in the immune chapter on Treat Lyme, I listed out for each of the various transfer factor products from Research Nutritionals, when would you use them? For which conditions would you use those? You can find that in my transfer factor article at in the immune chapter at Treat Lyme. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Tom. Thanks for that question. So Naomi, I know I answered this question earlier, but now I see that it is you that's also asked me about Byron White. I would, if your son's got this kind of psychiatric problems, I would not rely on Byron White. I would probably take a look at my article called Kills Bartonella for treatment options to get rid of a Bartonella infection. I find herbal options like the Hutania insita that I recommend will work about 70-75% of the time. But your greatest odds of getting over Bartonella actually would be prescription antibiotic combinations. And I recommend a minimum of 2 antibiotics. And I list those out and give you ideas on how you put that together in my Kills Bartonella article. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Ines. Let's see. Hello, Dr. Ross. Thank you for your work. You're welcome. I was diagnosed with Babesia, positive, W plus bands for Lyme at 23 and 31. Currently, my main symptoms are muscle twitches and fatigue. I'm on doxycycline 300 daily, azithromycin 200 daily, plus Mepron. I took them for 3 months, and I doubt I will get a new prescription. Do you think it's enough time? What would you suggest to complement this treatment? I took for 3 months. Thank you again. All right. So, Ines, for Babesia, we generally think it's going to take about 4 to 5 months to get rid of Babesia. So I do not think that's enough time. And for Lyme, if this is chronic Lyme that you have, meaning you've had it in you for a year or more, an average length of treatment is actually 2 years. I covered that with you earlier today, or in the webinar, I covered that earlier tonight. If you're only able to get 3 months of antibiotics or prescriptions, I would take a look at my treatment protocol, which I showed you earlier tonight, for the steps that you can do on your own using herbs to continue your treatment. Okay, that's what I would suggest you do. And I lay it all out there. I'm not going to cover it for you right now, but you can go back and read that treatment protocol that I have at Treat Lyme. That's treatlyme.net is the website. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Eileen. Let's see. What do you think of using colloidal silver to treat Lyme and co-infections? So I think that some people get benefit from it, but I tend to think it only works about 30 or so % of the time. So there are some people that get good benefit from it, okay? And they swear by it because of it, but I think the majority of people don't. The other thing you got to worry about is some of the forms of colloidal silver that are out there, there's a maximum amount you can actually take, because it actually builds up in your skin cells and can turn you a blue color, all right? So people can start having a blue hue about them. So I tend to stay away from it because I don't think it works that well for most people, and there's the risk of turning blue. And I don't think people want to be blue out there, all right? All right. Good luck to you, Eileen. Hello, Pamela. Let's see. Thank you so much for these great webinars and your Treat Lyme book. You're welcome. By the way, I've relabeled it. It's now just called Treat Lyme. People got too confused with the book because they think it's something that they can download. And as you know, there's nothing you download from that site, at least yet. Yeah, I am starting to think about making a hard copy of the whole thing. But that'll probably be towards the end of the summer before I would even be able to have the time to go ahead and do that. But keep posted. You are going to see, though, as I mentioned, the Treat Lyme site. I'm redeveloping it. Hopefully by the end of this month, we'll have a new site that we can launch, and I think you're going to find it a bit easier to use than this current site is. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see. All right. So can you explain the difference between plaques in the brain from Lyme versus MS? Over the years, I have been diagnosed with MS based on brain MRI. I do have some neuropathy in my legs. How to differentiate? Yeah, that's a good question. So unfortunately, both Lyme and MS can give you lesions that look the same on an MRI. All right, so then you get into the question, if you have MS and you've tested positive for Lyme, do we call it MS or do we call it Lyme? It's good. It's a fair question, okay? Because let's talk about what MS is first. So MS is a condition, it's a neurologic construct. And what I mean by that is we diagnose it if you have certain lesions that show up in the brain and you have certain neurologic symptoms. Then we say that's MS. It, however, doesn't tell us what the cause of it is, okay? And there may be multiple causes of that, of which Lyme can be a cause of MS. So it's possible you could say you have, if you also test positive for Lyme and have Lyme, you could say you have Lyme with MS features, or you could say you have MS caused by Lyme. And it's possible people can have MS and have Lyme, and maybe they're two totally separate conditions altogether too. So the answer is there's no way to differentiate, unfortunately, for the majority of people. So I don't have a good solution for you on this one. All right? All right. Good luck to you, Ellen. Hello, Mindy. Let's see. Hello, Dr. Ross. Which probiotic do you recommend? There's two that I like. One is to do a product by Soroil Genestra, and the product is called Hmf Forte. The reason I like Hmf Forte is it's made up of a similar bacteria to those that live in our gut, and it's been shown through scientific research to actually repopulate your intestines, meaning it works, okay? And if you get the Hmf Forte, I usually suggest 2 pills one time a day of that. I also, especially when people are having a hard time with getting repeat yeast infections, I like to add to that something called Probiotic or Prescript Assist Pro. Both of those are manufactured by Research Nutritionals. They are both what are known as spore-forming or soil-based probiotics. And these are bacteria that might come out of the soil that tend to do a good job of promoting balance in the intestines by helping the existing good bacteria that live there stay there, and also helping the HMF get a better foothold. Okay, so they help promote better effect of the good probiotics that you're taking. They're also considered to be probiotics too. And if you do one of those Probiotic or Prescript Assist Pro, 2 to 4 pills one time a day of that, you can take them at the same time as the Hmf Forte. Okay, all right. Good luck to you, Mindy. Thank you for that question. Hello, Andrea. See, do you have an opinion on the various herbal protocols? I'm unable to tolerate antibiotics. So, Andrea, I would take a look at the Ross Lyme Support Protocol. I showed that to you earlier tonight, which there's a way you can do it so it's an all herbal protocol. I think it works better than Cowden, and I think it works better than Buhner herbs. Buhner herbs can be good, but he's got so many things he has you take, it just becomes undoable to actually use it, okay? And Cowden protocol is not tailored enough to target the actual problems that most people have. It's a kind of a gunshot approach that I don't think works that well anyhow. I've tried to take the best of both worlds and throw them into the Ross Lyme Support Protocol. Take a look at that, and I think that's what I would suggest you wind up doing. I showed that to you earlier tonight. It's at treatlyme.net. There's actually a couple pages you can even print there. You can print off a table of all the herbs you take, why you would take them, and how you take them, or you can print off the whole protocol so you can review it with more detail later. Okay? All right. Thanks for that question. Hello, B. Dr. Marty, you disappeared during the attempted screen share. Yes, while it's actually shifting to the screen share, I will go away for a little bit. But then I come back. So there you go. All right. Hello, Rhonda. Hi, Dr. Ross. Is there any connection between chronic sinusitis and Lyme disease? And what would be the best treatment? I have just finished my 4th lot of antibiotics. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not aware of any relationship, actually. Now, that is a chronic bacterial sinusitis. I am not aware of a relationship, all right? However, you can also get yeast chronic sinusitis, and the relationship could be is if you've been treating Lyme with a lot of antibiotics, that may make it easier to get yeast up here, all right? So that could be one relationship. The other kind of chronic sinusitis you can have is allergic chronic sinusitis, okay? And that could be caused by something called mast cell activation syndrome, which we talked about earlier tonight. Those would be the main things that I would see related. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Rhonda. Hello, Angela. Let's see here. Dr. Ross. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Where to begin with natural medicines? As Armin Labs results for my daughter, who has 5 years chronic fatigue syndrome, indicate chronic active infection with Borrelia. The CD57 is low at 56 and indicates chronic immune infection. Borrelia Ellispot 1, Borrelia B full antigen, Ellispot 1. Let's see, Borrelia full antigen 4. Let's see. I'm going to read through this real quick here to give you an answer. All right, so Angela, the Ellispot, I would interpret, especially with that 4 number for the full antigen, that this is a positive Ellispot for Lyme. Okay, and then let me see. There's another posting here. All right. So, Angela, again, I would take a look at my treatment protocol. Not only do you want to poison the germs with various herbs or prescriptions, but you also want to do things to correct sleep, lower cytokines, fix hormones, etc. So take a look at it. It's pretty self-explanatory. It gives you the steps and the things to take, okay? That's where I would turn you toward. But yes, this does look like active Lyme. And so you want to make sure that you're poisoning the germ. If you're going to do it herbally, do a cat's claw and otoba bark extract. I talk about those in the protocol. I also tell you some different prescriptions you can start to use, and there's articles I link to from the protocol that give you even more prescription options, okay? But don't forget, in addition to poisoning the germs with herbal or prescription antibiotics, that you also need to correct sleep, you need to lower cytokines, you need to have your daughter on an adaptogen like the ashwagandha, etc. Take a look at my full treatment protocol, okay? Actually, I'm going to show everybody it again because I've had to mention it a couple times now. Back at Treat Lyme, click on this tab called Treatment Protocol. All right, and what I would tell you is this kind of incorporates the best of Buhner and Cowden and even puts my own twist on it that makes it much better. How's that for self-promotion? But I do. This is an approach very similar to what I use or that I use with my existing patients. This is what I have found that works, okay? So you want to read through here. I know it's rather long, but take a look through here. If you don't want to read it online, you can basically download 2 versions of it, a short, brief table or a long version, okay? But this gives you all the practical steps you need to do to recover from Lyme and do it in a way that you don't even need to have a doctor to support you in it, okay? Hello, Eileen. Let's see. Thank you, Dr. Russ, for your work and these webinars. You are truly appreciated. Thank you, Eileen. I appreciate that. right. And then let's see. Andrea, let's see. What are your thoughts on MMS? So it's a mineral supplement that I know that some people kind of have benefit from. I generally don't find much benefit from it with my patients. Now, isn't anything in Lyme? People can get benefit from different things, and just because, but I usually only introduce things into my protocols or things I advise in these webinars based on what helps a majority of people to get better. Okay, so those would be my thoughts on that one. All right. So, believe it or not, it is 6:17 right now. And I just got through all the questions tonight. I don't have any other new ones here. I will wait just a minute to see if anyone else is going to post one, but I think I've actually effectively gone through all the questions in the webinar tonight during the time. All right. So for those of you that are still here, in a second here, when I sign off of the webinar, I'm going to take you over to Treat Lyme, and I'm going to land you on the page where you can subscribe to read the articles that I have. And I'd encourage you to do so, because when you do that, you're actually supporting the work of these webinars, and you're helping my ability to get people well from this terrible illness, okay? As well as you. And you support me, I'm able to put out more useful information as well, too, all right? So I'd encourage you to do that. Take a look at your emails tomorrow morning. Around 6 to 6:30 in the morning, Pacific Standard Time, Seattle time, you should get an email which gives you the links to the recording for tonight's webinar and to sign up for next week. All right. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and sign off tonight.